Okay, so just to provide an outline of what we're going to be talking about today. So, first, we're going to start off by talking about finding research. So, finding research in college and things that you should be thinking of asking when it comes to that. And then we'll transition to talking about contacting professors, like what that process is like and how to write emails to professors. And then we'll talk about how, as high school students, you can get involved with research, and then we'll close off this event by having a Q&A session where you guys can, um, you know, ask your questions and whatever you might have inquiries about when it comes to research. And we'll also be talking about our experiences when it comes to research.
So first, I just wanted to go into a little bit about the types of research that you can kind of go into both in high school and in college. But these are there's not just one type of research, and whether or not you're looking at some sort of professional school or things after your undergraduate degree, um, it is just important to get involved in what you think is best for you and what you think you could put the most effort in and be the most passionate about. There are many different types of research. Traditionally, when people think of like research, they think of a wet lab, which is like bench work. Basically, you're working with some sort of maybe bacteria, mice, something like that, and you're doing very like biology focused research in like a wet lab or bench setting. But there are many other types of research, such as dry lab research, which is very computational. Especially nowadays, it's a lot easier to get dry lab work, especially in the pandemic, because it can be done remotely. A lot of times you do need some sort of coding experience, but even then, I had a dry lab experience this summer, and all I really had to do was learn some imaging software. And so I was able to work on processing microscope images and things like that. And so there are ways to get involved with dry lab, even if you don't have coding experience. Another example is clinical work. If you're interested in actually working with patients, you can do so as an undergraduate student. My university allows this. But basically you can, if you are intending on working somewhere in a hospital, in a lab that is attached to a specific hospital, a lot of the times a research hospital, I mean, a lot of the times they do have some sort of clinical experience that you can have actually doing research with patients, but a lot of the times you have to go through quite a bit of training and making sure that you know how to act around these patients and you know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, because it's a lot more, I would say, like, I wouldn't say high risk, but I guess you guys know what I mean. And the fourth type of research that's really common is like review research, in which you are looking at a lot of other people's research and kind of evaluating the efficacy of certain research, or perhaps looking at some sort of certain documents and trying to utilize those in order to create some sort of analysis of these documents or analysis of some sort of research like that. And this happens a lot with survey research and things like that. So there's not just one type of research, there's a lot of different options. So keep that in mind when you are looking at labs and when you are thinking about what you want to pursue.
Right, and then I'm going to talk about where to find research. We're going to talk a little bit later about some summer programs that you could participate in as a high school student. Personally, I've been a little more familiar with doing undergraduate research at my university. I know Caitlin mentioned doing research outside of the university, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about that maybe in the Q&A if you guys are interested. But at your college, something I've found really helpful is just reaching out to professors whose class you enjoyed and seeing if they have any undergraduate opportunities. Prior to reaching out, I've done things like looking at my professors online and kind of reading some of their publications so that you're able to be a little bit more familiar with what kind of research they're interested in. Definitely, that will be something that kind of makes you stand out as a student, especially if you don't have prior research experience. You really want to show the professor that you're dedicated, it's something that you're really interested in. So I would suggest that, I guess we're all on Zoom now, so maybe emailing your professor after you have class, telling him you really enjoyed his class, you're interested in what he's interested in, things like that. Also finding open research positions through a school website. So I'm at UC Santa Barbara. We have a website where professors can post a little bit about what they're doing, what their lab's like, and what they need, and what requirements they need of you to be able to participate. So you could reach out to your school counselors, ask them what that research page is, and just go through it. Again, I also wrote, don't be afraid to do research outside of your major. I've only done research outside of my major. So I think it's just definitely important to, go through what's available, find out what you're interested in. I think that it's important, to show, especially if you're a pre-med student, that you have various interests. It's not a bad thing to have various interests. It really does make you unique. I also wrote that, I'm not sure how many of you are going into like biology or chemistry, things like that. Sometimes it's really hard to get into one of those labs without prior experience, especially if you're kind of on the younger side of your undergraduate. You haven't really had the like hands-on lab experience yet. You kind of, you have to take those classes as well to get that experience. So I think sometimes, doing research in potentially your minor or another field that you're interested in, it's going to demonstrate your ability to be in that scholarly environment and work with professors, work with teaching assistants or graduate students. And I think that's really something that can help you maybe get into the lab that you really want to be in, your second or third year in college. And I also wrote just utilizing the connections with graduate students and teaching assistants. Kind of depends on what college you end up at. I go to a UC, so if you guys aren't familiar with that system, it's really big. A lot of the research you do as an undergraduate is going to be underneath the graduate students. You're not directly working with professors. So being able to build those connections with some of those graduate students during your courses is really beneficial because they do have more time to connect with you than professors, and they really will be able to assist you in kind of finding a placement for your research.
Next, I just want to go over questions you should ask yourself, and a lot of it is based off of like where you can find research and stuff like that. So, what are my interests? And that kind of can go into both the field that that you want to go into after college. So, in your medical career, the type of research you want to do. So, of the four, would you be interested more in wet lab and working in a laboratory setting, or like more working with patients in a clinical setting? And you should really ask, like, why am I passionate about this? And all these questions kind of help you when you start to write your emails or formulate like um, your first approaches to a professor, a teaching assistant, or head of a research lab. Where would I be able to conduct research? And that can mean transportation restraints, meaning like how far are you from this place, or how much time are they asking you? Um, how much time would it take for you to get there? Um, and how well versed in lab techniques or learning are, sorry, my bad. Are you well versed in lab techniques, or are you going to learn during the course of the research internship? And that kind of depends on your ability to do research, may depend on which internships that you are likely to join. What are my skills, strengths, and weaknesses? What can I highlight to professors at the heads of labs? Um, and that this is kind of another thing that I want to go over in the email outline, because once you ask yourself this and kind of point out what's good, what you may need to improve, it's easy to highlight that and say you would like to take this opportunity to improve on such weaknesses. What do I plan to study in the future, and how can this research opportunity help me achieve my goals? And this can be within or outside of pre-med. Um, a lot of the research that I've done is actually through research that I've been passionate about, and over time that does change. And so my research experience, which I'll go into later, may not seem like a cohesive, I guess like cohesive passion or research thought, but it's okay to do research within and out of pre-med, just to show that you appreciated learning some specific part of research, but it has led you to, how do I say this, reconfirm a certain belief that you have about or what you're passionate about. Okay, yeah, and then I wanted to segue over to contacting professors. And so this is the email example that I put together. You want to start off with a greeting, and that can be dear professor or dear Dr. So-and-so. Hello, I hope this email finds you well. You do want to introduce yourself. So my name is blank. So my name is Caitlin Gill, and I'm a current sophomore at Tufts University. I would like to express my strong interest in the summer internship or internship in general or research opportunity in the, for me, I do like biology department at such and such school, or it could be like a hospital if you're thinking about off-campus opportunities. An internship would be an amazing opportunity for me to further explore the medical field as well as the field of oncology, as an example. So you do want to put an introduction together, and you want to mention the purpose of the email, because if they're just going to read 1-2 lines of your email, they need to know what it's about and who you are. The next, if they're kind of into the idea of you having an internship at their lab, then they would kind of want to know, why are you interested in a lab there? So something that I've done is put together a personal story of passion of like why I'm interested in that certain field that I wanted to go into. So personally, I've been interested in oncology, which has turned into a bit of dermatology now, but personal story of why I'm interested in oncology and how that has changed my outlook on school, academics, and my future. And then the next paragraph, I guess you would want to include prior experience, skills, and techniques. And you don't necessarily have to have experience, but mention like what you would want to be learning, or you can always mention skills like being a team player, ability to adapt to certain circumstances, and kind of mention, maybe if you want, you can mention an anecdotal story of like how you've adapted to that. And that could be at, a science class, if this is a science-based internship. And then you want to go into 5, what are you interested in and why you would be interested in working with the professor. So in the future, I hope to develop my interest in the medical field through an internship at blank. I'm certain that blank, so it could be the internship or you as a professor, will help me broaden my knowledge and skill set. And then you want to kind of wrap it up with a message of gratitude and kind of looking forward to your response type of thing. I'm immensely interested in working alongside you at blank this summer. I hope to engage in more future conversations about any opportunities. Please feel free to contact me. And thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to your response. You want to include your contact info, and also when you attach your resume, it's probably best that you actually mention that you attach it in your email too.
Hi. So I'm going to talk about the timeline. So it's a very vague one, but it also addresses everything that you need to know when it comes to research. So first of all, like, if you don't have an idea of what you want to do, research about different topics, like find out what different topics that you want to learn about, what interests you, because sometimes finding the right thing when it comes to research, because sending just cold emails to professor is not going to work unless you know what you want to do. So the first and foremost step is to find out where you want to do research, how you want to do it. I will give an example. I was interested in P53. I read about it, like I read a book in high school, and I'd just been so much interested in it. And so I contacted a research professor who was at my university who did research on P53 because of my interest. So like I had an interest about it. I read a book about it, so I knew about it, and that's why I decided to focus on that part and email the professor. Unfortunately for me, the professor was only interested in students who were on a graduate path and not a pre-med path. So my email got declined for that reason. But I feel like you have to like look into yourself before like deciding, and sending out emails is what you want to do. So it's okay to like, you will get some responses where you won't be accepted. So that's just part of it. So like you might have to research more. Another thing that I was interested in was psychology. So, and that's how I started emailing professors who were in the psychiatry department of USFL and asked if they had an open space in their lab, since that's what something I wanted to do. And luckily, in the end, it worked out for me. I'll explain the whole story later on. But the main thing is decide what you like, research what you want to do, decide on it, and then proceed, and then dedicate. Like once you have those 4 steps graded out, it's going to help you find research very promptly. So I feel like that should be your timeline of yourself, how to dot into research and how to get research. Next slide, please. Also, other considerations. When you are emailing the professor, as Caitlin mentioned, make sure like you read about their research and address those points in the email. I feel like if you know what the professor or what the doctor, who that person has like done the research, and if you have read through their research paper and you thought about the importance of them, it really makes like the person know that you are definitely interested in the research. You have to do some background homework before getting into it. So and so that's one of the important point: time investment and time commitment. A lot of research professors want you to stay and like work through it, so you have to be committed. It can't be just for like some time, 2 hours a week. That's not gonna work. Research requires time. It's gonna require at least 5 to 10 hours a week of your time. So make sure you're able to invest and like commit time before you get into any type of research, because it's not going to work out in both sense if you don't do that. So that's one of the important things that is like to take into consideration. Also, there might be a chance that you're going to work in a team. So make sure to like that like have an idea about it, since and have some teamwork knowledge, because that's one of the ways you can do well in research, because you will be working in a team, researching together, writing the papers together. Everything would be done in a team. So that's something that is also important to take a note of. Also, try to connect with the research. So like connect in the sense is that you know them on a personal level, like not that much, but like what they want to do and how to um build a good relationship with your research advisor, because that's one of the important things that I found out is also important, is the research advisor should know you and put forward like everything you have. Don't hesitate to ask them questions. Don't hesitate to put your ideas forward, because that's also one of the things they actually like when you put your ideas into the emails, or while you are conversing with them for an interview, for the research opportunity. Put forward your ideas. Tell them that you are interested in this, and this, and that's and they will appreciate it, because that's one of the things that is important to connect with the research professor. And also try to contact graduate students under the professor, because I feel like you, as Jasmine said, that there's a chance that you might not be working directly with the research advisor all the time. You might only be able to meet them sometime or like rarely. So contact graduate students, like get to know them as well, because they're also very helpful, and they they are the main point of your contact when it comes to research, or if there's any graduate students in the lab. So that's about it.
Okay, so now we're going to transition to talking about what high school students can do to get themselves involved with research.
Okay, so I've put together a pretty large list about some summer programs that high schoolers can do. And these are a lot of like national level research types of programs that are high schoolers can apply for, and I will be sending this list out as well. You can take a screenshot of it and look over it yourself in addition. But one thing I will like to say is that one really great way for high schoolers to get involved with research is, number one, applying to one of these summer programs that are dedicated to high school research. In a lot of cases, what happens is that a lot of research professors or advisors or things like that may be wanting to take an undergraduate student over a high school student in a specific setting if you're in a locale where there's a college town or there's a college nearby. So it's kind of difficult to get that research. However, in addition to these types of summer programs, this is one way, number one, you put on your resume that you've done prior research. But also, if you ask a professor or a researcher in a hospital or at a lab or some sort of thing over the summer during high school that you'd like to work under them over the summer, if they can see your work ethic and they see that you are a valuable resource to them as well, it's quite possible that you can continue with that professor or continue with that researcher later on in your high school career. For example, if you did this your summer before junior year and then you can, or summer before senior year, and then you can continue through your senior year, something along those lines. It is, of course, not impossible to get research as a high school student, even if you choose not to do a summer program. In a lot of cases, these summer programs are paid. My personal favorite, I would like to point out, is the National Institute of Health Summer Research Internship. And that's actually available for both college students and high school students, and it's fully paid. And you get to go to DC, and DC is awesome. So that's what I did last summer. So that I had to give a little plug in there somewhere. But one thing I will like to also mention is there is a program, NeuroHealth BC, and it's the second to last bullet point. It is a current research program happening for high school students, where high school students are being currently matched up remotely with mentors and doing a sort of virtual research. So this will be both, as I mentioned before, that type of review research using documents and creating some sort of study, as well as computational research and things along those lines. The deadline to sign up is tomorrow. I only found out about it yesterday. Otherwise, I would have sent it out in the newsletter as well. But this is a great opportunity, and definitely look it up as well. And I'll send out this list later on as well. So this is throughout the course of the entire next semester would be this program. But besides that, I would say there are a ton of summer programs that high schoolers can apply for. A lot of them are paid. Some of them you have to pay for, some of them you get paid to go to. So it really just depends on what you kind of get and what you can apply for and things like that. So yep, definitely that is a great option for high schoolers. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, use that same email that we had talked about a little bit earlier to contact professors and researchers in your area to see if they'd be willing to take you in for an internship just over the summer. And if they think that you'd be a valuable addition to their lab, then you could really continue on with them, because a lot of college students go home for the summer and there's a lot of other things. And so the lab might be a little looking for more assistance or a little more help. And even though it might be entry-level research or things along those lines, it's a great opportunity to get started in high school. So yeah.
All right, and then just a little bit about how to prepare yourself in your resume. So resume preparation, it's definitely kind of scary to do, especially if you don't really have any prior research experience or work experience. But choosing a template, I don't know if you guys use Google Docs, something like that, but I put some photos on the left here, and those are the templates that are given through things like that. I also know Word has some templates. So there's a lot of ways that you can organize. You can also look up different templates if you want a little more unique. So they're easy to find, easy to use. So the way I structure my resume is I put work experience first, then research experience, education, and volunteer experience. It's also really important to put your most recent experiences first. And also I just got the recommendation this year, actually, as I'm starting to apply for postgraduate jobs, To include a short bio about yourself, your passions, and your goals. It kind of like makes you stand out a little bit more and shows the employer or professor that you want to do research with like what you're interested in. Something I will say if you don't have any experience is I'm sure a lot of you did some volunteer work in high school. That's definitely something that's a little easier to do, especially if you're trying to tailor to demonstrate your passions and experiences. It's honestly great to put that. I actually, coming in from high school, I had formed a club in my high school and I put that on as experience because I didn't really have any research experience. And, it kind of struck a chord with one of my professors who was also interested in sustainability. So, and that was what the club was for. So I think it's, you can utilize what you've done before to create a resume. It's okay if you don't really have any work experience yet. That's going to come. They understand that you're coming in from high school. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Also, just a little bit more, I didn't include it on this slide, but as like cover letters and going off that as well, kind of like Caitlin said in the email. So I guess you would almost already have a cover letter in that email that you're sending out as interest. But if they do ask for a cover letter, it's going to be structured extremely similar to that. So, you want to show your skills, your passions, why you're interested in their research, and a little bit about yourself. And then I also wrote just online presence kind of helps, propel your career and your ability to make connections. I don't know if you guys have heard of LinkedIn or use LinkedIn. It is a really great resource. You're able to connect with different people. I'll just throw in a personal example. I'm a pharmacology major and we have lab over Zoom now, which has been strange, but my professors have been bringing in people who work in biotech field. And, we had this great presentation from someone, and right after I connected with him on LinkedIn and, we started talking about his company and that he might have some jobs for undergraduates. So I think it is a great way to utilize resources, build connections, and see what, your connections are up to. Also networking with professors and colleagues. Some of my professors have even said, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll share some resources to you. I'll give you these great opportunities. So I think it's a fun way to, it's such a virtual world right now. So that is another great way to kind of prepare yourself and build those connections.
And so I just wanted to, again, just in addition to what Jasmine was talking about a little bit of preparation and things you can include on your resume, but these are just a couple of other things that you can do before looking at labs and applying to labs. Show interest by taking courses geared towards those interests. If your school perhaps doesn't offer a neuroscience course, but you want to do neuroscience research, perhaps over the summer, take a Coursera course in something that interests you. Maybe read a little bit like about research articles that are interesting in that field that you're into. Talk to other people, start a club, things like that. Like exactly how Jasmine mentioned earlier. One other thing I'd like to mention is maybe join a journal club. A journal club is generally basically a group of people, and you basically pick a scientific article, or whether or not it's scientific, but a research article every week or every couple weeks or even once a month to go through and read and present basically about what this article found, what the results show. Do you believe the results? Is it valid? What kind of method did they use? Things like that, and just kind of analyzing this scientific article. And there are a lot of opportunities to do this. If your high school has one, that'd be a great thing to do. If your high school doesn't, that'd be a great thing to start. And there's also a lot of online ones nowadays. Because of the pandemic, a lot of high school students have been creating these as a form of connection and scientific exploration in lieu of a lot of the experiences that have been canceled because of the pandemic. Another thing I'd like to mention about lab preparation, consider what your first steps may be when you enter the lab. Perhaps you may have to take like an entire semester of your first year of college or whenever you join the lab, just training and learning how to handle different situations and things like that. For example, the lab I'm currently working at, I need an entire semester of just learning how to work with mice before I'm allowed to work on my own independent project. And so that's definitely a consideration you want to take take into something you want to take into consideration. Another thing is to find a mentor, perhaps someone who has done a similar sort of research field from you. I have a friend slash mentor who is a senior this year and I'm a sophomore. And she was actually the one that was helped me find my current lab. And so it's just a great way to make those connections and find the ability to get these opportunities and things like that, even if it's a grad student. And personal preparation, make sure that you know how to balance your time and what you're signing up for, because college is a transition from high school. And no matter how difficult your high school was or how prepared that you feel, it's always going to be a transition just because of the change in environment. So make sure you know that you are able to balance your time accurately and effectively, and make sure that you are not overwhelming yourself with too many things, especially in your first semester.
Great. So now we're going to transition over to a Q&A, and we're also going to talk a little bit about each of our experiences with research.
Okay, so I guess I can go ahead. I am a neuroscience major, and I chose to do a lot of research specifically within my major. That is also because I am pre-MD PhD in addition to pre-med, and so I am interested in pursuing a PhD in neuroscience in addition to an MD degree, and so I want to make sure my research reflects that. Past summer, I researched at the National Institute of Mental Health, which was through one of that similar program that I was talking about earlier. And I hope to go back with my same lab next summer. And so it was a lot of computational research for me because it was remote and was because of the pandemic. So basically, I did a lot of image processing and things like that. And the way I actually found that research was through Slack channels and GroupMe groups that are like pre-med GroupMe groups and Facebook groups and Slack channels. And I think that is a very effective way of finding opportunities, because a lot of people share these sorts of opportunities across of these channels and things like that. And it's a great idea to join some of those types of things. I currently do research at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas, which is where Rice is. And I am working on mouse models and Alzheimer's research for Rice University. And in high school, I actually did independent microbial research. And so this was basically, my high school didn't have a lot of research opportunities. And so I was able to actually talk to my biology teacher, and I was like, hey, I really like bacteria. This is really cool. And so she actually worked with me to write a paper. I didn't publish it, but it was just an independent study onto how microbes work, certain types of microbe interactions. And it was just an interest project for me. And that is also a great thing to put on your resume, is just like some sort of interest project that you're passionate about. Sorry, I just went off there. I'll pass it off to Smitha.
Yeah, so at Tufts, my major is community health, and I'm pursuing a minor in women's studies. I first wanted to talk a little bit about the independent research I did in high school. So one thing that I don't know if like all high schools offer this, but is kind of along the lines of like independent research in terms of science fairs. So my high school had a regional science fair offered at our high school, but also a state level science fair. And I think these are often overlooked, but really great opportunities to get involved with research throughout high school. So my freshman year, I started off and did a project about contact lenses and microbes and testing how various contact lens disinfectant solutions can be effective in preventing various eye infections. So I looked at that. And then my sophomore year, I was able to get into a lab at a local research university near me. So University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee Zilber School of Public Health. So I was able to do some pretty interesting research surrounding microbes that are commonly found in the Milwaukee River, and understanding how various chemicals like tricarbon and triclosan are impacting the health of various species living in the Milwaukee River, but also broadening that to environmental health implications. So that was really cool. And what's really nice about working with a mentor in science, like through a science fair, is that you can really use the opportunity to learn some new lab techniques as a high school student, of course, but also conduct your own research. So in that sense, I think that getting involved with science fairs is a great opportunity. And currently my research interests are kind of lying somewhat as an intersection between my academic interests. So right now I am a research assistant at the Tufts School of Medicine Mother Lab. So that research is centered around BIPOC maternal health and finding ways to both advocate and reduce disparities faced by women of color. And I'm also involved in a COVID-19 research project through the Massachusetts General School of Health Professions. So this is a collaboration between a lot of Harvard students and also Tufts students, and we're designing a COVID-19 curriculum that is being distributed in Chakai, Bihar, and India.
All right, I'll go ahead and go. So I'm a pharmacology major and I'm minoring in religious studies at UC Santa Barbara. And some of the research experience I've had is I believe it was my sophomore year going to my junior year. So something I'd like to start with actually is anyone going into the UC system, it is kind of hard to find research experience. You know, the UC system is very big. There's a lot of undergraduates looking for research, especially pre-med. So I actually got the opportunity to start my research experience in summer because I was doing school over summer. So sometimes taking classes over summer, being on campus, you know, there's a lot less students and that can be helpful. I actually got into ecology and evolution lab at UCSB and we were doing plant propagation research. We were starting a research study that was kind of a lot of field work. A lot of like I was working with 2 graduate students and 5 undergrads. So it was a lot of learning how to work with people, learning how to work in a research lab, a lot of tedious tasks surrounding plant research, but it was really interesting. And then this year I'm starting on my own independent research study in religious studies with the help of a professor, and I'm hoping to publish that by the end of the year. And then also I'm working on another independent research project in ecology, and I'm hoping to publish that as well with the help of a graduate student. And that also, the opportunity I'm getting to do all these publications in my own independent research is actually from the graduate student I was working with in that summer research experience. So it is really helpful to build connections, as everyone's been saying, kind of with the people that you work with in labs, because it allows you to, you know, ask them for help later, you know, because it was during COVID, I was hoping to get in a molecular biolab, but all of those have been shut down. So it's been really nice to be able to kind of get that help and new research from, you know, the connections that I built prior.
Right, Aldo, sorry. My mic was not working for some reason beforehand. So research experience, I have a two research experience. One I'm currently right now. I'm an assistant at research assistant at Innovation in Mental Health Lab, which is a part of USF Health Lab. And it's basically what we try to do is find innovative to address mental health, right? Whenever it comes to like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic disorder, and it's a group of five of us research assistant, and we all work on different sets of topics. Right now, my main focus is working on my thesis with my research advisor and doing an independent research basically on how family environment can affect the parental anxiety, parental depression, as well as children anxiety and children depression, and just addressing that and I'm hoping to get it published by the end of the year. So that's what I'm working on. And during the past 2 summers, I have also worked at under Dr. Mirza. He's a resident, and he used to go to USF Med School. He does this ABCD free clinic research, which I found on Facebook, which is weird. But one of my advisors posted about it, and I got into it. And it's basically you help chart the data that they have collected from the free clinic researchers that are around in the area. You collect the data for med students, and I feel like even if it's just collecting data and doing basically nothing, just helping the med students with their research, I just learned a lot about research as a whole, because it's like computation and just learning how to understand medical terminology, how to address have to look for data and how past history, importance of past history when it comes to diseases and all that stuff. So yeah, even if it's just like a small research experience over the summer, it was very beneficial.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, I do have mostly off-campus research experience, and I guess I kind of want to work backwards with my list of research experience. But lung oncology independent research is something that I did in high school because my high school had research opportunities, and I was able to take advantage of that. Um, Also at my high school, we were given this senior internship opportunity where we take one day, so it'd be a Wednesday out of our schedule, and that'd be dedicated going to an internship. And because I'm in Northern Jersey, I did take advantage of my proximity to New York City. And so I had a breast oncology clinical research experience with Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, which in the end gave me prep for my dermatology internship at Mount Sinai Hospital this past summer, which was remote. I think that an important thing to realize is that sending in many applications or emails to many different professors and doctors is definitely helpful because you will sometimes get rejection, sometimes you don't get any response whatsoever, and you need a bit of a luck sometimes. And my dermatology internship was just based on luck, actually. So having like kind of preparing yourself for not necessarily like always getting a response might be something good to understand. A little to go into my research. Lung oncology was I kind of it's from my high school, but I was looking at how successful nanocarriers would be in possibly aerosolizing them and treating lung cancer. Breast oncology was a clinical breast cancer research experience, where I was able to it wasn't necessarily a clinical in terms of I'm dealing with patients, but I was working with patient records. And in that case, I was doing a lot of like the training that was mentioned earlier in this presentation. And then finally, the dermatology internship that I was doing was more review based than it was clinical or wet lab, which was my first oncology one. So I kind of had like a broad internship experience, especially with research.
Awesome. So I really appreciate all of our panelists sharing with their experiences. And if you do have any questions about anything specific that the panelists mentioned, you can feel free to send us an email at collegeambassadorship@gmail.com, and we can definitely, which is I also attached in the chat, but it's also at the end of the presentation, which we'll be sending out later, as well as ask anything a little bit more broad in our current Q&A session. So how this is going to work is basically we are just going to go through first come, first serve, whoever just shoots their question in the chat, starting with some of the questions that were sent earlier in the presentation. And then if nobody has any questions beyond that, we'll cover a couple of the questions asked in the Google form that you all use to RSVP. And then we'll just, that'll be it then. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with our first question. First, I think one of the first questions was in our resume, what should we highlight if we don't have prior research experience? And I think Jasmine covered that really well on this slide. And just to reiterate, Jasmine, do you just want to quickly reiterate what you mentioned?
Yeah, so I tried to answer that a little bit during when I presented it, but if you don't have prior research experience and you're in high school and people are trying to tell you, tailor your resume to what you're doing, I would definitely include, things you've done in high school. Like I said, my resume before I got to college and got more work experience, research experience, I had, co-founded this sustainability club, made me really interested in, environmental health, safety. I did all these other volunteer things. So that was kind of the bulk of my resume at the time. Don't be afraid to include things that may not seem like things you should include on a resume. Normally, you guys are younger, you're just learning how to do all of this. So yeah, I would include volunteer things you've done in high school. I think that's really okay to include while you're kind of learning and getting that experience. You know, people know that you're coming in from high school and you aren't going to have as much experience as other people.
Perfect. And if anyone else has anything they'd like to add to that, that'd be great. Otherwise, we can move on to the next question. Okay, our next question was, do medical schools consider research outside of college, for example, research with a private biotech company or different organizations and companies, still valid experiences?
Yeah, I'll actually take that one. So my major is pharmacology. I'm about to graduate and I'm looking at research opportunities and jobs in biotech or pharmaceutical companies. And, you know, something I've gotten from my advisors, you know, I can't speak for specific medical schools, but I do think that, you know, they're going to consider any research that you've done, any work experience that you've had as beneficial to your training and what you're learning and what you're interested in. So I do think they would consider that, I guess, as research. You know, they're really looking at you holistically as a student. They're looking at what you've done in school with your university, those experiences, and outside. So I really think that that's not something that's going to be negative or affect you in any way. I think any research experience is good experience, would be my answer to that. Yeah.
I just want to add in and say that sometimes your interests may not and passions may not be available on campus, depending on what school you go to. So finding those research opportunities outside of school is representative of that you're willing to go the efforts to actually get to what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's a great that's a great way to look at it as well. As our third question, I think we've addressed a little bit as a high school second year. What do you suggest I do to prepare myself for research opportunities? Does anyone want to kind of reiterate what we've gone over, or I guess I can mention a little bit as well is that one thing that I had mentioned earlier was, you know, kind of preparing yourself by maybe exploring those interests, joining a journal club, thinking about realistically what you may have to do once you first join a lab, and thinking about how you would balance your time. Perhaps if you maybe wait a semester and take a course or a couple of courses that interest you in that field, so you know if you really like that field or if you just like the idea of that field, because that is quite common as well. Does anyone else have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I feel like you already mentioned this, but just what you said about the journal club, and, you know, reading research papers. I don't think I read my first research paper until maybe late in my freshman year of undergraduate. And I really do think that it's a big learning curve, scientific language. It's very different than what you're going to used to reading in high school. So I do think if, you know, you want to prepare yourself just personally, not really something you can put on a resume. But I would suggest just, you know, looking up Google Scholar, things that you're interested in, and, you know, reading those research papers and learning scientific language and learning research methods through that is going to be really beneficial. And I also think that, you know, joining a club where people can help you process that information will be really helpful.
I also want to add, there are a lot of resources to find research articles, like as Jasmine and Anita mentioned already, that research articles are exactly like they're completely different language. They, for them, you have to take time to process and read. Sometimes you have to reread it twice. Sometimes you have to like let it sit on, read after a day or two. So I feel like using Google Scholar is one of the things, but I also feel like some high schools have their own. If you go to the library system and try to access some articles through the library system of the high school, you will find a lot of research articles through that way too, to that familiarize yourself with how to like read research article, how research works basically in general. It doesn't matter like what type of research you read, as long as it's something research related, like how they did an experiment or how they did something, it's gonna be helpful. Even like case studies, anything is helpful when it comes to that.
Okay, our next one is it important to have wet lab experience?
Personally, I don't have any wet lab experience at all. My research has been through either through like indirect clinical research experience, or just computational research, um, or just like trying to come up with like dry lab experience. So what I'm trying to say is like, as long as you are doing some kind of research, it shouldn't matter what if it's a wet lab. To be honest, as long as you like what you're doing is more important. So I mean, it's not. I'm not saying that I don't like wet lab research, but I enjoy what I'm doing right now the most. I love to help like address mental health because I'm interested in mental health, and that's something that I want to pursue. So that's why my research is more coordinated towards innovation, like what basically it is about, like innovation in mental health, helping um, mental health, because I come from a background or culture where mental health is kind of considered a stigma, and I want to get rid of that stigma as much as I can, at least in my like around my family, around my relatives. So I feel like that's why I do what I do. So yeah.
Awesome. Our next question is about my research experience at the NIMH, and I won't like exactly, go into that, but I think I'll just mention a little bit about how to get similar experiences. And I think, as I mentioned before, is when I applied for this internship, I had no prior experience besides some independent research that I'd done in high school. And it was really me and my biology teacher doing this research. It was not like, anything official or anything of the sort. But I think just demonstrating that I was interested in it through reading those articles that the lab had published in the lab that I was interested in going into, as well as for example, going into like some of the volunteer opportunities I had done, in addition to a bunch of other things. I think that's just a great way of just demonstrating what you have done, demonstrating what you're passionate about, and showing that sort of hard work. And it's just about finding those types of programs. And as I said before, joining like these pre-med group me's and pre-med slacks and things like that is a great way of getting those, and Facebook groups, sorry, is a great way of finding some sort of opportunities as such. And then a couple other questions are about any specific websites or research article recommendations that we've read, or things that are online. If anyone has anything specific they'd like to mention, feel free to go ahead.
I just posted a link of it's like a free database link, and if I can find a couple, I will give them. I'll forward them to Anita and Sneha, and they can add it to the email that I sent you. But, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like any of the things that I've read recently are a little too specific to my major and pharmacology research, but I am going to send a link real quick just to the New England Journal of Medicine. There's a lot of different like medical journals you guys can look up that I just have like had experience with professors and reading it on my own. But that has some interesting research. A lot of it is COVID-19 based right now. I will say something about reading research articles right now. I don't know what level of education you guys have done. A lot of this stuff and some of the methods I wouldn't have understood until I took intro biology lab and all of those courses that really explain methods to you. So sometimes it might be harder to understand at the moment, but it will just give you a little bit of insight into that language.
Okay, does anyone else have any more specific questions that they'd like to post in the chat? Otherwise, we'll be going on to just a couple of the questions that were sent in the Google form. So I'll give it about a minute. Okay, I'll ask a question in the Google form until then. So one thing I would like to talk about is some students have asked about paid research opportunities. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Do any of our panelists want to talk a little bit about that? About their experiences, and then I can talk about my experiences as well.
Just a quick thing about paid internships is it depends where you do internships. University changes by university. And in terms of off-campus, at hospital, those types of experiences, I personally know that in New York City, that if you do get an internship where you're doing a work that another intern or worker would be doing, that you do have to get paid. So I did have a paid internship throughout high school, which was through that program I had mentioned.
Yeah, I'll just say it definitely depends on what school you're at. Again, I'm in the UC system, so it is pretty competitive, and usually undergrad research opportunities aren't paid. But I have found some resources, where there are scholarships or grants that, if your research is unpaid, your internship is unpaid, you can get stipends through that scholarship. So it's definitely something to ask school counselors if you aren't getting compensated for your work, but you do have financial incentive to do so.
Yeah, I'm in a similar situation as Jasmine. We usually do not have paid research opportunities. Most of our undergrad opportunities are our own time without them being paid. But yeah, I feel like there are a lot of like out of campus or like out of school opportunities that are paid, like summer internship opportunities, and some opportunities are something that are usually paid. Sometimes you have to pay a little, but I feel like they are also worthwhile to um, address. So that's something, yeah.
Okay, so I will take the very long question in the chat right now. I actually did IB as well. And so one thing I will mention is that using this, specific to your experience, I would mention that this would be considered research, even if you were not able to necessarily utilize, do wet lab experience. As we've mentioned earlier, wet lab experience really is not the only type of research, and it is very important to make that distinction, because medical schools and schools in general, graduate schools and places in general, do look at all of the forms of research that you have participated in. And so to Iman's question, I would consider that research for sure, and I would mention that. And yeah, so just make sure you pick whichever research you think fits you best when you get to university, even if it's not exactly what you did in high school, or even perhaps you might switch labs during college. I've had friends who have done that, and it's just a matter of finding the best fit for you. So we can go ahead and take maybe one last question in the chat if there is any. Otherwise, that's all we'll have.